and welcome to VIP Boxing's Bell to Bell podcast. I think we're on around episode 54, 55, something like that. I didn't check before we started recording this week. Thanks if you're watching on YouTube. If you've downloaded and listened on iTunes or Spotify, thanks again. Very good of you, and I hope you enjoy this week as you seem to most weeks, looking at the reviews we get. I'm Steve Lillis. With me, my co-host, John Evans. You okay, John?
Yeah, very good, Steve. It's one episode for each year of your life, isn't it?
Hey, mate, I'm a bit nearer. Then what am I? No, I'm a bit older than that, mate, I'm afraid. I've got a landmark next April, but I won't be, so I'm not going to be celebrating it. Anyway, I'm glad you're okay, John. You'll be even better after Oldham at the weekend, mate. Last minute winner. You're our injury time winner against a team that's been winning for weeks. There's not been a day like that at Boundary Park since Joe Raw was manager, I don't think.
Yeah, relegation battle in November, aren't we? It's going to be a long, hard slog, this, but God knows what's going to happen. We could have a new manager next week, so it's one bright day in a pile of mire, to be honest.
Anyway, our special guest this week, a man who knows his football, he knows his boxing even better. He's been on Bell to Bell before, top journalist. He's at the Daily Star, I think, is his main paper, but he's Daily Mirror, Daily Express, or is it Reach PLC, they say now, these journalists. It's Chris McKenna. You okay, Chris?
I'm good, mate. I'm just annoyed John stole my joke about the age. I just had that one lined up as well. So all good, mate. I work for any paper who'll have me, basically. Yeah.
Are you Reach PLC, do we have to call you now? I saw my pal Dean Wilson, who's a cricket writer at the Mirror. He puts Reach boxing, right, cricket correspondent at Reach PLC for his social media account now. So I'll call you Reach Chris.
Nah, I'll stick Daily Star first. I'll look after the people who brought me in.
Yeah, mate, Lordy. Old school you, mate. One of the few old school boxing journalists left. You're about the last of them you'll be in a few years' time, mate.
I keep getting called old school. I think it's because of the receding hairline, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're old school. You're still a baby compared to me, and you're like the last of the old school. Quite fiery, have you say? You're definitely old school, mate. You come under that banner.
I'll take it as a compliment, pal.
Anyway, well, we're ready to go this week, fellas. You know how it works, Chris. 3 minutes on each subject, and then John gets his bell out to silence us. John, are you all ready to go this week? And I think you're going to start with, is he the best? Who?
Yeah, talking about Terence Crawford after last night when he stopped Shawn Porter in the 10th round, and I was thinking about Crawford's career since he came over and boxed Ricky Burns, or before that when we saw him box Breedis Prescott on short notice. And I was just wondering, is he the best fighter since Floyd? The other people who come into the equation, you'd have Andre Ward, went unbeaten, didn't he? Came through them 2 fights with Kovalev. Lomachenko was great. He's been beaten a couple of times. Gonzalez. Roman Gonzalez, great, but coming to the end. Canelo, Usyk is in there. But Crawford, he just seems so versatile. He can do everything. We've never seen him come close to losing. The fight with Porter's probably as close as it's ever got, and he stopped the guy in the 10th. He can be aggressive. He can outbox you. He can outthink you. If he chose to do it, he could probably bore you to death and grind you down over 12 rounds. Nobody seems to be able to pose him a problem he can't solve. Spence at welterweight is, I suppose, the ultimate fight for him, unless he decides to go up to 154. But I'm not sure we've seen a fighter as unbeatable, maybe Usyk apart, since Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem for Crawford has been that he hasn't really had, I suppose, the competition, their fights. We've seen, obviously, with Porter was the big test, and we knew how good Porter was in comparison to who else he'd faced, and in the division, he'd faced everybody else, basically, the top guys that are around now. And I think this weekend showed that, his level at welterweight, and now I think he has that argument. Me, myself, personally, I think there has been better fighters since him, but if he can go up to light middleweight and go up and dominate there, after if he goes and cleans up the welterweight division, I'd love to see him become undisputed welterweight champion. I think that would really, really kind of lay down a mark. And I think that's what's got to be next for him. But until then, for me, I think he still lags behind to say what Canelo's achieved and Usyk and to an extent Lomachenko. But John's definitely right. He can do everything, it seems. He can be aggressive. He can stand off you. He can just pick you apart, whichever it is. He can wait until the 10th round when he's told that he's losing, which was a clever tactic, and then turn it on like that as well. Brilliant.
What's so amazing, I remember being in the Box Nation studio with Buncey the night he beat Bradus Prescott when he stepped in at about 5 days' notice. And I knew the name, but people expected Prescott to beat him, I think, that night. I think Prescott may have been the favourite. That's how mad. I'd say a fight, you used something there, John, who's looked so unbeatable since Floyd. I think you've got to throw Inoue in there as well.
Inoue, sorry, yeah.
Because, he's looked more unbeatable, I think, than anyone in the world.
He got pushed to the limit and got
by Nonito, but he's still pretty unbeatable, I think. I think, these things about, best fighters since is very, very hard. Over to you, Chris. It has to happen.
Yes, so I continue on about that. It's Crawford Spence. There is no other fight at welterweight. I don't want to hear about them having any other defenses. I know Spence hasn't had a fight in a while. I know he had the eye injury and the Pacquiao fight fell through, but I just don't think they can wait anymore. I think Crawford's age, Spence's age to an extent, he's often still seen as a young fighter, Spence. He's not really anymore. He should be at his peak now. This should be his best. I know he's had the car accident. I know he's had the eye injury, but this is the time for the fight. Crawford said this weekend he's not re-signing with Top Rank. He's going to be a free agent. So there's no promotional issues. There's no politics now. He can sign with BBC. He can do one fight deal. He can do whatever he wants. That fight has to happen. And then we will really know who the best at welterweight is. On last night's evidence or this weekend's evidence, you would look and you'd say it's got to be Crawford, but I still think we need to see him in there with Spence, see what the size of Spence and see what problems he can pose him. But no more excuses. Get it on. Get the fight done. It has to happen. No more waiting 2-3 years because one of them will get beat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I think you've said everything I would say, Chris, but it's just where he's going to go for himself now. I mean, the obvious home for him now is the PBC because they could make the Spence fight in a heartbeat, maybe give them both an interim fight and meet this time next year to really build it up. But you know what? I wouldn't sleep on someone like Probellian who seemed to have a fortune sweeping him up. And of course, Richard Schaefer, who's the head at Probellian, he can work with PBC. He's had a relationship with them for many years, but you know what? These fights like this, it's the best fight in boxing that can be made now. I'm just we see so many of these fights happening too late. You just wonder, is it going to happen in 2 years? When it would be far too late because someone else who's promoting them might see, it's beneficial to go another direction, not get him beat.
Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? But I just wondered, like Chris says, is everything just? We've been talking about it for a long time anyway, haven't we? And it's finally now Crawford's cleared the last obstacle. I don't think we can wait another year, 18 months because they're both so big. But Crawford looked big last night and Spence's, I'm saying it, but I think he's bigger than Crawford. They're both going to be fighting to stay at welterweight for a long while now. If we both move up to 154, there's other people who could be better at the weight. You never know. It's got to happen next. It's got to happen at 147.
Yeah, I'm just frightened if they go with the same promoter, they might try and build the fight to milk it out a bit. That's why I'm saying that, John. That's my fear that might delay it for a year. Because these things do happen.
Do look at the heavyweight division.
Round 3, it's just what I want to get your opinion on, fellas, particularly, is Demetrius Andrade. Look, it was a great performance the other night against Jason Quigley, but it's what, without all due respect to Jason, who's really is a fringe contender, from his performance that he's seen. It's what a good fighter should do to the likes of Jason Quigley, get him out the way there. Him against, Andrade against Jamal Charlo is a cracker. I've no idea what Chris Mannix was doing, tweeting this. The best fight in boxing or the biggest fight in boxing right now? I mean, that was just fucking madness. I don't know what he was on that morning, on Saturday morning. But look, it's a great fight. And you know what? I'd still fancy Charlo to come through when you've got two really good fighters at that meeting. For me, I can watch Andrade because he fights for that minute around where he's absolutely brilliant. We saw that particularly in the Liam Williams fight. You know, he'd be outstanding for like 60 seconds in a round, and then he'd let Williams back in the round, and that's what made it competitive. He's a fighter, I think I said last week, John, if he could do it for 3 minutes a round, he will be up there with the modern greats. So just wonder what you guys thought of Andrade and where he could stand.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's a brilliant fighter. I mean, he has been guilty of kind of taking his foot off the gas in fights. I thought he did that against Liam Williams. I thought he had Williams hurt and he could have got the stoppage. And I think that's where maybe he suffered. He's a bizarre fighter in that fight against Quigley took place, I think it was an hour and a half from his hometown. There was empty seats everywhere, and most of the crowd there were Irish people supporting Quigley. And that's just wrong. He's a two-weight world champion, undefeated American. Why isn't he, why hasn't he really ever, I know he had promotional issues earlier in his career and he's been with Eddie a while now, but I think, yeah, there's a great fighter there, but he needs to be pushed more. He needs to go out maybe and deliver more performances like he did against Quigley. Yes, you can argue that Quigley was, I don't want to use out of his depth, but he was just kind of overwhelmed by Andrade. But he needs more performances like that. The Charlo fight, great fight. The winner of Golovkin-Murata, great fight. There is really big fights out there, and maybe that's what he needs. Maybe he needs that big event, big fight to go out and really kind of grab the public's attention.
I just wonder if Andrade does get the big fight where he's got that little bit of fear, like a Golovkin or a Charlo. Will, on the big stage, when he gets his opportunity, will he go negative? You know, will he use his advantages and will he stay safe and will he stink it out? But we don't know until we get there. And I tell you what, he deserves it, doesn't he? You know, he's been a champion long enough now. We've got to see exactly what Andrade's capable of.
That's right. I mean, how long ago was it he beat Brian Rose and Vanes Martirosyan, I think it was, to win the junior middleweight? Round 4, Chris, you want to talk about a bit of cheerleading in boxing?
Oh, go on. Yeah, I'll
sorry, John. It's John on. Oh, that's me. John. John wants to talk cheerleaders.
You mentioned Chris Mannix talking utter bullshit about Andrade. He's just the latest person guilty of this. A couple of weeks ago, DAZN's post-fight interviews with Kiko Martinez and Baumgardner, it was like the guy was doing a eulogy at a funeral. He couldn't have been more miserable that those two guys had upset the odds. On Saturday night, we had Adam Aziz, you know, clearly a phenomenally talented kid. You know, he can really box. His fight lasted 4 minutes. We had mention of a world title and Prince Nassim Hamed. And they said the kid he beat had never felt anything like it, Stuart Greener. Well, he got done in less than a minute by Mark Chamberlain a month ago.
Oh,
I just don't understand who benefits from this. You know, if you're saying these kids are the best, people who do know what they're talking about brush it off as bullshit. And people that don't know what they're watching start thinking, well, why is he not fighting anybody good? And it just builds up the pressure to rush them. I don't see any benefit in just talking them up to this level so quick. You can build people up and talk them up without anointing them the second coming. There's got to be a better way to do it, because at the moment it's just cheerleading.
John, you're so right. When you told me you were doing this subject, I wrote down Adam Aziz against Stu Greener. You know, Adam Azim could become a very good fighter. I was told about him he was using the gym in Surrey that my friend trains at for a little while. His dad took him. I think it was Azim and his brother. Anyhow, that's irrelevant. He looked excellent against Stuart Greener, but the way he was being sold, I know there's a lot of problems in matchmaking at the moment, but guys like Stu and Phil Williams, who were on last night, they're journeymen on the small horse circuit. They shouldn't be on Sky TV or any other channel. And look, it's just what we get. I think with broadcasters now, it's the same with football. There's no such thing as a bad game. There's no in between. Everything's brilliant and sensational and the greatest you've ever. And I just think it's what we're getting in so many sports now.
I think it's a kind of a problem of the competition now, isn't it? That these broadcasters now feel, probably from within as well, that they have to justify their existence. So it's Sky Sports or BT's bosses or the Zone's bosses. Why are we paying for this boxing? Is it any good? Yeah. So they're kind of all over-egging their own stuff. Whereas I get your point, Steve, on football. There's no bad games, but you still have valued criticism. You still have maybe a Roy Keane coming. He's not that good, that player. Or let's calm down on this player. Whereas with boxing and broadcasters, it just all seems to be just like, everything has to be, the next big thing. We always have to compare every fight. And look, I'm not going to say tabloids, we're guilty of it times too. We compare fighters to Naz or Joe Calzaghe if it's a Welsh fight, just because it gives that kind of thing. But I do think it's a problem of the competition.
Chris, promoters having a pop at each other now, round 5.
It's more promoters having a pop at other fights that are good fights. It's just, I do not get it. Promoters ask for their opinion a lot, especially now in the kind of age where there's YouTube, there's cameras put in front of them every 5 seconds. They're doing interview after interview, and that's a good thing. Fair play to them. But there's this thing where they all seem to need to think they need to knock down other fights when they're good fights. There's no problem calling out bad fights. There's no problem calling out people that shouldn't have world title shots. There's no point calling out bad mismatches and stuff that's dangerous for the sport. That's what they should be to do. They are one of the key stakeholders in the sport. They need to do it. But this thing where, and I'm only picking him out, I'm not saying it's just him because they're all at it. I've seen a clip of Eddie Hearn last week saying Crawford Spence, $70, that's going to tank. Okay, you can say it's too expensive. You can argue that, but why are you saying it's going to tank? Why are you putting that negative energy into the fight? You should be saying what a great fight it is. Fair play to Shawn Porter for pushing for the mandatory status. Fair play to Crawford for taking on the fight. And what happens to these promoters is it comes back and it bites them, because Terence Crawford's a free agent now. So why Eddie Hearn surely would want to sign him. If he doesn't, he's mad. So maybe Crawford will say, well, you said I wasn't worth $70, so why should I come to you? All of these things comes out. It's happened to promoters as well. Josh Warrington, because he flipped about, different promoters said different things about him, and it all comes back. It all changes the story when they're on their side. So it's a madness. Just, if it's a good fight, I don't get why you have to knock it. Why do you have to say, oh, it's sold no tickets? Or what you should be saying is, why aren't people buying tickets for this fight? It's a great fight. I get it. You got to promote your own shows, but let's not kill the sport by just probably being negative on everything just because it's a competition. And it's everybody who does it, not just Eddie Hearn.
You know, I think hasn't helped it in this country, Chris. It's not a knock at them because they do a great job. They're at every press conference. Their traction's incredible. That they've created. It's become a monster in the nicest sense. Is IFL, because they just play Eddie and Frank against each other all the time, and then weekly interviews. I don't think that helps the matter either. What's your opinion of this, John?
Yeah, exactly the same. I was trying to equate it to football, and you don't get a manager saying, no, that's a terrible game. They promote the Premier League as a whole, don't they? And everyone watches all the matches on all the different channels. I'm sure if they promote rivals fights, say, look at this, why is no one buying tickets to this fight? It helps the sport grow as a whole, doesn't it? We need boxing still. I think it's pretty much a minority sport when you look at who's actually interested. And we need all the fights to do well. We need all the channels to be watched, and we need pressure on to make the big fights.
Round 6, final round. Is Canelo bigger than the sport? I just want to, again, your guys, particularly you, Chris, as the guest, important. He's jumping to fight Ilunga Makubu, and it shows he can do what he wants. He can, he has become, as you say, we're a minority sport, and Canelo's become bigger than that sport, or the side of the sport who are, he is the biggest attraction in the sport, most probably way above anybody else at this moment in time. I don't like people saying he's cherry picking Makubu. I mean, he's beatable, but he can punch Makubu, and he's been in some thrillers. If anyone, only boxing diehards are going to watch this, so I'm sure you've all seen the Kudryashov fight. The only thing I'll say, Canelo, the last 2.5 years, Khalid Plant, Billy Joe, Callum Smith, Kovalov, Jacobs. That's a sensational run, and people was in Triple G twice before that, and people are still saying he's cherry picking and moving up. It's madness. The only thing I'll say about Canelo is that he's a completely spoiled brat, the way people run around him all the time, from what I've witnessed before. I've even seen people waiting outside for the toilet for him to make sure he was all right. But a press conference for Liam Smith, it was madness. All these Golden Boy promotions people, about 10 of them around him, taking him on the pitch to kick a ball with Liam Smith. He wanted to go to the loo, and suddenly they all run to the loo with him. It's like like the president. It's like when someone would shoot a president and all the bodyguards jump on top, but instead they waited out the loo outside the toilet while he had a wee. Anyway, that's all. Is he bigger than the sport, Chris?
I mean, that was before he even fought Golovkin, and then
That was clear,
he's gone another level since then. So I don't know what happens with the toilet procedures nowadays. But look, is he bigger than the sport? Yeah, he probably is. I think he's in the territory of Mayweather now, where Mayweather just did what he wanted, called the shots, fought for whatever titles he wanted, because everybody just wanted to be involved with him. I don't know who is the number one contender for the WBC cruiserweight title. I know Riakpo had an eliminator this weekend, but it wasn't a flying eliminator. So if I was the number one contender, I'd be pretty peeved off that if this geezer's just coming up from super middleweight. But who's going to say no to him? WBC, and because he brings so much money to them. Macabu's not going to say no, because he's probably going to get his highest payday, maybe times 5, whatever he's getting for this fight. I don't think they've even talked financial stuff. He's just agreed to it. And I think that just shows you how big he is, that he can just go up in weight, 2 weight divisions, get a world title shot. But I mean, people who say he's cherry picked, I mean, what do you want from the guy? He goes back up to super middleweight in a pandemic, gets promoters involved, rival promoters, all to pay him stupid money. And he fights 3 world champions and gets rid of a nonsense mandatory that could have been problematic. But he didn't just do what some people do, which is like, oh, I've got that mandatory, I'm not going to fight it for 6 months. He goes, nah, that's an easy fight. I'll fight in February then and get it out of the way so I can fight Billy Joe Saunders in May. I mean, that's what you want from boxing. And he's bigger than the sport. He will always have the blemish on his record of the failed drugs test. But he deserves to be as big he was, and he deserves all the money he gets offered, because he's shown everybody how it's done in regards to just fighting the best all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't he? He could probably set the weight limit for Makabu, couldn't he?
Yeah, I was thinking he most probably will do, yeah.
Catch weight.
Yeah.
Well, Mayweather did that, didn't he?
If he said 185, the WBC would probably bend over for it. But yeah, at least he's going about it the right way. Canelo could, as you've both said it, Canelo could do whatever he wanted on whatever time scale he wanted. But to give him his credit, he's taking on unbeaten guys, dangerous guys, fellow champions, and he's doing it quickly. And I remember speaking on this it must be about a year ago on this podcast, where we said we hope the other fighters would follow Canelo's lead, because what Canelo does, other people seem to follow. You know, that's the most popular thing. We used to do it with Floyd. And I was hoping that people would follow Canelo's lead about being active and fighting good competition, but that's not quite worked yet, has it?
No, it hasn't. I think, other world champions to fight 4 times in a year. They just don't want to. I mean, I don't think Gary Russell's fought 4 times in 5 years, has he? And he's still a world champion.
Yeah, well, that makes a mockery of the sport, doesn't it? That he hasn't been stripped, whereas you're talking about Tyson Fury potentially being stripped or not if he doesn't fight Dillian White, and he's just had a defense, but that's a whole other debate. But Canelo just a different breed. And John said, why don't more champions do it? Because he's shown it's possible. He's shown that you can do it, and he's shown he's getting better and more kind of traction behind him by doing it, because when he's fighting in these shorter time spans, people aren't forgetting about him. It's not like he's going away and disappearing for 6 to 8 months. And then, Canelo, that's that fella. It's like every 3 months he's in the ring and people are going, oh, yeah, great, he's back again. And that's great for the sport. And look, there's the other side of it, the dangers of it, more sparring because he's more active, more fights, more punches he's taking. But that comes with the sport. And he can retire a little earlier than maybe what he's planned, because he will have achieved everything he's wanted in such a short time, because he's going to run out of things to achieve soon. I mean, I'd guess his plan now is go up to cruiser, win this world title. I don't think he's going to stay there, but I think he's going to do what he kind of did with super middleweight, because he get his time right. He went up and fought Rocky Phelan, didn't he? And then he went to light heavy.
Yeah.
And then he came back down. And I think that period at light heavy going up, he kind of puts on the muscle, doesn't have to cut too much. But then when he gets his kind of strength for the weight, cuts the weight, comes back down. I think he'll do that with cruiser and come back down to light heavy and then go after Beterbiev and those guys at that weight when they're a little older as well. And that is being clever too. And you have to, that's managing it. But Floyd was great at that. He took on all comers, but he also knew the right time to take on people too. So
you've missed out the finale to his career.
Go on.
Alan Babbage for the WBC Bridgerweight title.
Oh, hey, I tell you what, he could jump the bridge.
Babbage is
I
in
think
the top 3 of the Bridgerweight rankings, and
he would
Canelo's
beat Alan
be
Babbage. He would beat Alan Babbage at heavyweight if they wanted to do it at heavyweight.
But you know what? I think that's a great point you make, Chris, about being able to retire early. Because he might be thinking, he's a businessman. He might be thinking, well, I keep active now. I want to retire in 3 years anyway. Well, if I retire in 3 years and carry on 2 fights a year, that's 6 fights. I could cram in 12 fights in these 3 years and make 3 times as much money. But John, I don't know if you got any inside tracks. I know you know Zach Parker well. This could fall nicely for Zach Parker because he's unlikely to hold on to his WBO super middleweight unless they make him some super duper champion and let someone else fight for it. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Zach Parker against Danny Jacobs for that WBO super middleweight now.
Yeah, I know Neil more than Zach, but you can guarantee that Neil's got a plan in place.
Yeah,
he'll have plan A, B, and C and D. And I know they wanted Jacobs. They wanted Lemieux, they wanted Jacobs. So all those guys, Parker would fight tomorrow. We would agree to fight them tomorrow. So we're not saying if Canelo will manage to keep some version of a WBO super middleweight title on it. Yeah. So whichever WBO belt they invent for super middleweight, Parker would be happy to fight whoever they put in front of him for that.
That's where it shows he's
title.
That shows why he's bigger than boxing. The WBO or invent some gold belt for him or make him some emeritus champion. If you want to fight for it, the champion has to fight you instantly.
Yeah. Remember a few years ago, he fell out big with the WBC, and it was the first Golovkin fight. He refused to pay the sanction fee. But now they can't give it. Now his house must be adorned in various WBC belts that he's getting from all these fights. Maybe that's why he wants to fight so active. Maybe he likes the belts and he just likes hanging them up because they've come up with some crazy belts for him. I have to say, every time there's a new name for all these mad belts, but fair play.
But when you're that big, everyone wants it. If you're, not carrying the sport on your back, but you're the biggest attraction in the sport, bigger than the sport, you can do what you want.
Says, I generate a lot of money. I'm only paying you 0.5% sanctioning fee.
Yeah, he can do that. It's almost like
how low do you think Maurizio? Do you think Maurizio would even accept 0 just to have his belt and his face on the pictures and stuff like that? Do you think he's that keen?
Maybe not 0, but a minimal amount they would accept to be seen. Because you think when he's defending the WBO championship against Billy Joe, was it and suddenly the Puerto Rican guy in charge of the WBC's there giving the big grin, especially them sort of things. You're going to think, hey, I should be there and all that. But hey, you know what? We all do. I see pictures of mates of mine at football matches and I think, I'm not there today. I'm gutted. This is a lot bigger than that. We're talking money. But yeah, they'll do what they want to be seen with Canelo. Hey, when it's like, you'd want to, if when I was 20 or 25, I wanted to be seen with Cindy Crawford on my arm. Would I? Never in a million years.
That's another dream you're having, mate. But
I'm always dreaming, mate. I'm always dreaming.
What's always great about Mauricio is how quickly he gets that WBC T-shirt on them. Absolutely drenched with sweat. Usually you can't get anything with fabric over, but he somehow gets it over them, their head and gets it on to make sure.
Can you imagine, you've achieved your lifetime goal, you've won the world title and you're posing for your pictures and he's trying to get that T-shirt on you.
The best one I've seen.
No, don't they? That T-shirt would be off. Let me have my pictures and then I'll carry a stupid T-shirt around.
I'll tell you who does love a picture. We're going off them. And I saw one this week. I forget who it was. Who won the big fight on DAZN last week? There's so many fights on at the minute. And it was all the team are in having a picture with this boxer. He's had a big win. They're all smiles. It's a lovely picture. And suddenly you see David Diamante in the middle of it holding the arm up. Dave is another man who loves a picture.
There's a lot of those guys in boxing, isn't it? What a sport for that.
That's why John Evans, we call him John Selfie Evans, Chris, between us.
Oh, yeah.
No one hates a selfie more than Evans, I'm telling you, Chris.
I don't take I don't take them. I couldn't tell you when I last took it.
I know. I know. No one loves. Anyway, fellas, thanks for this week, Chris. Great insight as always, and great knowledge. Great that you stood out there. You're doing a great job for boxing and keeping it fresh in the Daily Stars, whereas a lot of the other guys are struggling to get lines. You keep up doing that, mate. You're last of a dying breed, my friend.
Hopefully I'm not dead soon then.
I know you got plenty of time, and you're definitely not dead, John. You're too lively, mate. Talking space science on Twitter, I saw earlier, discussing it with Jamie Cox. I mean, you and Jamie out there. Hey, Twitter's an awful place, but Jamie Cox and John Evans discussing space science. That's what Twitter was invented for. Cheers. Thanks, fellas, and thanks everyone for listening.
For all boxing info, news, and latest interviews, amateur and pro, across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.